Point. Is this real? Or is this just a ride? The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The ride goes up and down, round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored. It goes up and down, round and round, and it's very loud. Don't worry, don't be afraid, it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. Why are we here?
I think we're part of a greater wisdom than we will ever understand. A higher order. Call it what you want. Know what I call it? The big electron. Whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa. The big electron. Whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa. It doesn't punish, doesn't reward. It doesn't judge at all. It just is, and so are we. For a little while.
Welcome, folks. You're not in the Corporation Nation. I got to remember, you still are in the Corporation Nation. But right now, it's Sunday. We're all taking a rest. It's the Sabbath day from the legalism. We practice legalism all week and then pretend to worship God on Sundays by taking a rest and watching football. You're in Red Pill Sunday School. Excuse me. Pardon my little mistake there. I've got Daniel with us today. Daniel, who was with us about a month ago, and has done a get together, a conference, whatever we're calling it, and we'll talk about that a little because I know people are wanting to know where to get that. And but before we get there, I want to make a little announcement. I don't have to tell you folks that the world is going completely stark raving mad before our eyes, and that the people who seem to gather around these types of shows, searching these types of networks, searching for some grasp on reality lately, I don't think I have to tell you that everything and everybody around us seems to be going absolutely nuts. And attacking each other and just going absolute apeshit. I don't know what to do. I see what's happening. I understand what's happening. But there's nothing I can do about it. It's already done. The deed is done. The drugs have been administered. The mimicry of food additives have been combined to create synthetic drugs in your body. Everything has already been done. We've all been vaccinated. We're all suffering from that damage. There's so much stuff that has happened to us. In that light, because of recent things that have happened, and because I've realized that, hey, even this weekly show that I'm doing and preparing for is taking me away from other things, from writing, etc., I'm going to call it quits on the radio. I hope to do, other shows and stuff, and I hope some people will help me to get on to other shows, but I have to take a sabbatical. I have to get out of this insanity, this rat race, I feel like a freaking narrator for the end of the world. That's what it feels like. I feel like I'm narrating the downfall of the human species and the rising up of the machines. That's what it feels like. It's like I'm Howard Cosell talking about the devil playing the game really well, I don't like this anymore. I need to focus on what is permanent. These digital broadcasts, they are, I know they're appreciated. I get it, but I gotta write. I find myself speaking into the microphone, but not writing down what I'm saying. And that's not a good thing. That's what I was doing before. And that's why I had to quit radio before. this weekly burden of having to be prepared for a show, etc. I gotta go. I gotta get back to writing. I gotta get back to research and really connecting all the dots, because I don't think people have any idea how much it takes to create that first book, and this second book is equally as intertwined with lots of dots to connect. That being said, I'll do a couple more shows, at least one. If hopefully I'll do two, because there's some new information that I need to share. Because thanks to Camille, who sent me a very large tome of research having to do with FirstNet, I'm going to do a presentation on that. Hopefully, get it on my blog before next Sunday, and then do a final show, final roundup. Why I'm quitting. Why I just can't handle this anymore. Or the personal attacks, the infighting between people it's just driving me insane. I don't want to put up with it anymore. But that being said, couple more shows coming your way. Thanks so much to Jules for giving me the platform, and all of that good stuff. And thank you to everybody who's supported me along the way. And I hope you continue to, because I'm not going away. I just got to do my right. I just got to write. I gotta take care of my health. I gotta get back to the gym. I'd love to get back into some music. There's just things that are missing in my life. These things that, what's the point of living without some of these things that make me feel? And those are the ways I express myself. So, anyway, that's my latest news. So, a couple more shows, and we'll call it a wrap. And like I said, I hope that people will promote. I would hope people would promote Daniel, myself, Patrick Jordan, to all the other radio shows. And I know there's. I'll talk about this in my final show. That look, I understand there's gatekeepers. Okay. You'll never get me on a gatekeeper show, so don't even try. And you know who those gatekeepers are. All right, they're called gatekeepers for a reason. So don't even try. I've been scheduled and canceled many times with those guys. So it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. Anyway, we only have ourselves. We only have these kinds of shows to really get it out there. Anyway, Daniel calling in from Canada today. Welcome to the show again, my friend.
Well, hey, thanks again, Clint. I feel what you're feeling, and I understand it. It's quite the. At times, knowledge can be a real burden, because you're looking at things in how they are in the reality, and you're watching all the non-reality of craziness go on, and it's like it's a robotic society. Just a very big robotic society. I've even brought that word up the other day. I had forgotten about it, and I didn't realize it came from a Czech or a Czechoslovakian background in language, and it means forced labor. And most people would tell you they don't want to be out there doing what they're doing, but the problem is we keep energizing the very thing that is the problem. So we're the only direct thing that can stop it. And I guess what I want to call is just what is evil out there relies on that state of mind, that you feel hopeless, that there really isn't anything you can do about it, and then you're just gonna just keep on doing that same thing over and over again that you know is wrong, but you're just doing it even though you know it feels wrong, and the people that have been at the top end of what we call success out there, why are they so suicidal? Why is it that you see people in the entertainment field that looks like they've got the world by the tail, so to speak, but they're the most unhappy and the most into substance abuse and the most into run-ins with the law and arrests and this, that, and the other thing, and it's like they can't even find a piece of in any moment in their day, because they're being watched continuously by that media and that those crazy people who feed off of all this. So, anyways, it's an idiotic society, that's for sure. It really is full of ID.
Well, we have that. See, this problem, Daniel, and I figured out what our biggest problem is in this particular genre, if you will, because we have the same thing. We're each other's peers. I mean, the difference between here's why the founding fathers, here's why the kings and queens and all their relatives who rule the frickin' earth, why are they so successful and why are we so unsuccessful? Well, it's because we have the libertarian joke played upon us. We practice the libertarian method where we're never organized, right? We don't have a brotherhood. They have a brotherhood, right? We talked about this in another show. The word Philadelphia comes from literally the Philadelphs or the brotherhood. It's a Masonic order. They can disagree with each other. They can have completely opposing opinions to each other, but they will always be a brotherhood. And they're a brotherhood not of God, but of Satan. Right, that which is adversarial to that which would be peace and well-being in nature. Right, their adversarial, their brotherhood is one of bad, one of control, one of evil. We don't have a brotherhood of good. We don't have a brotherhood under God. We don't have a brotherhood under Christ, and so we fall apart. The second that we disagree with each other, we tear each other's frickin' arteries out. We have no organization because we don't have a central goal. We don't have something that drives us. We don't have organization in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, they have this brotherhood, and they know their goals. They know they're out to destroy free will, to absolutely kill the spiritual notion, and to bring everybody under them into slavery. We know that's obviously what their goal is, how to approach that, how to do that. They all differ. They all disagree. But they never, ever, ever betray one another. Oh, yeah, you could say they betray us, but they don't betray. They always stay in their brotherhood. What's the difference between them and us? Why do we lose every time? Because they're an organized team, and we are an unorganized bunch of gits. We're just exactly what they say we are. We're fools, we're plebes, we're unorganized, we will always be defeated. That's the problem. And why? Because we don't have God. It's simple as that. You know what? When I say they have said that before. That is why they will defeat us, because we don't have that common ground. We don't have that common law. We don't have anything. So yeah, what's the point of doing this? What's the point of getting on here and speaking to these things? It's either time to act or it's time to go. Just accept your fate. And I you know what? I haven't decided which one I'm going to do yet, because honestly, what's the point if no one else is doing it? What am I going to do? Walk around the woods, right? What am I going to do? If no one else is going to do it, then there's no point. So that's where I'm at. My mindset has become, well, I mean, aggravated for one, but also, the theme of our show today, Daniel, is very simple. And you know what? It took all of this effort. It took all of this straining. It took all of this research and all of this sleepless nights and horrible dreams and, all of these different things that I've done throughout my life to get to the point where I finally understand the end game. And it's so simple, right? To get to simplicity, you have to cut through all the bullshit, all the difficult stuff. And you know what? It turns out, folks, that there's no piece of paper. There's no paperwork. There's not a trust or a deed or some fancy words that you're going to use in court. There's none of that. There's only playing the game or not playing it. There's only volunteering or not volunteering. There is only accepting the name or not accepting the name. In other words, there is either something or there is nothing. You are either going to pretend to be something when you are no thing, or you are not. And that's all there is. There is nothing else. There is no solution. There is only nothingness. Just pure being, pure existence, without any fictions, without any names. That's all there is. And you're either going to get there, or you're not. I'm either going to get there or I'm not. And Daniel is either going to get there or he's not. And that's really where we're at. We're talking about what is positive, something that is addition, or we're talking about something that is negative, something that has never been added to. All of the law of man is positive, all the law of God is negative. Guess what? The whole point is to go against what is positive and to remain in the negative. In other words, because a negative cannot be proven, the negative cannot be brought into any of their systems. Their laws don't apply to the negative. Their laws are positive laws that apply to positive creation, something that's added. The surname, the number, the mark, the sign, the token. These are the things that you have to get rid of, both mentally and, if you will, on paper. You have to stop. Again, you either have to be nothing, negative, or you have to be positive. You can't. There's no in between. There's no stepping in and out. You're one or the other. And you know what? Like I said, it's taken me this long to understand that. It's taken me this long to realize that everything we're talking about, it's all in addition. It's all in the positive realm. All in the realm of the tree of good and knowledge of good and evil. All useless information. And that's where we're at. This is the only true knowledge that there is. There's either something or there's no thing. And you're going to pretend to be something, or you're going to know that you are no thing. What say ye, Daniel?
I like your truth. I don't know if I could have said it any better than that. I want to ruin it. The reality is that the laws of man and what is passed by man ruling man, which has been warned about throughout the ages, and especially it's been noted in the Bible, but the trouble that comes upon man ruling man brings about a need to be able to tag the participants in it and to know who's in non-reality and who's in reality. So we'll be caught always in a dilemma if we're in a double think on this, where we try to put the two things together. We try to put the truth and the non-truth or the non-reality together. And I think the fear factor is that we've been so imprinted into a system so long that is made something that's wrong right, that now to go against it, we think we're going to be viewed as terrorists or we should be a terror to evil. Certainly, we should be a terror to a lie, of course. But that's what happens when you do something that's right versus something that's wrong. And I'm at the same point you are. I'm at this. I want to use the word crossroads, but I'm at this junction where I know I can't go back to where I was before. Under any circumstance, I can't go back to it. It would just be me going against my moral conscience now, and so there's no possible way anybody can force you to be something that you're not. But the aggregate of people out there are miserable, and at the same time, they want you in the misery. So you have a very, very narrow road, as spoken of in Scripture, to walk, because the path that we're walking in truth is very, 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 very few people you're going to pass on that way. Whereas the people on the highway or Broadway to evil, confusion, they're everywhere. And the lawyers basically have, they run every aspect of this, and they're not going to come the right way on it. So don't go look for a lawyer to get a moral wake up somehow, because he can't, because of what he's sworn to uphold.
Sure, and that's
He's working in that side.
You got to understand that when you look at the Bar Association laws, they're not called laws, they're not called rules. You know what they're called? They're called canons. See, the bar has canons. They cannot break with those canons. It's like a religious society that you take up. You cannot break with those canons. Those canons will not allow you to come out against the Bar Association. The Bar Association has certain views, just like any association, just like the United Negro Fund, just like the your ADL, etc., etc. It's the same thing. They have their set standards. They're either pro or against. They don't go against that. And the second they come up against something that is one of their trade secrets, literally a trade secret, they will back off. They will not pursue it, right?
And they can't because of what they've sworn to non-disclosure. Not disclosure. There's not the disclosure that they do in the world. They do disclosure is not the disclosure we're talking about. Any officer of the government that basically can be brought in to bring in a full disclosure on an instrument or a government document. We'll just say all the registration of births being one office, that would be the Registrar General in most of the states or provinces. They will literally, if they were ever brought into a court and you said you wanted to have full disclosure on everything to do with anything that was put on file regarding any use of a legal jurisdictional name, they basically can immediately, being the one that's in custody of the records, in control of it, in the jail, in the compound, they will basically claim Secrets of the State Act, and you are not able to force them into that court of law to bring those records into the court. So monetary make-believe money, mammon, it's not real. So they don't have to disclose it because they haven't violated anything natural in a sense, because it's all make-believe.
Wasn't there...
We're not really hard to make-believe, so we don't have to tell you what we're doing.
Wasn't there a movie? Wasn't there a movie that had to do with the secrets of the state, that what the attorney could usually get, the information they couldn't get?
There most likely was, because I mean, it's every part of anything that I've ever researched seemed to have a movie that was based on it. One of the movies that I was aware of that was just recent I reviewed, there was a movie called High Crimes with Ashley Judd and Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman played a military lawyer, and Ashley Judd was a regular lawyer. And the difference that was stated between their law is that the regular law system was an accusatory system that was based on affirmation, to affirm something. The military law was based on denial. It was a denial system of defense. So what we do is we walk in and affirm the lie, which removes the burden from the Crown having to prove anything at that point, and they just proceed. Because what the heck would you be at the court if you weren't the guy or the person or the persona or the one wearing the additional name? And that's where we lose most people, Clint.
Well,
what do you mean, addition?
It's like going in and admitting that you're cattle.
Exactly.
And so I'm in your pen now. I've crossed your bar. I'm in your pen. I have no rights now. Serve me up as a juicy steak or some bacon. I mean, that's basically what you're doing. It's
a layman, and they'll say, people have even said it. You'll hear it in the court many times. They'll go, oh well, and the judge will say, oh, he's just a layman, because they know you're not a member of the bar, because you'd have to declare that when you're in there. If you were a member of the bar, you got to let them know. all lawyers are going to state that they're a member of the bar, or they're not allowed to play around in there. So if you're not a member of the bar, you're automatically deemed to be a layman, and a layman was considered in law to be an idiot.
Of course, and I don't think, again, we're considered born fools. That's actually a legal term. So it's funny that we don't know these things. And I take it back. They won't turn you into a juicy steak. They'll just milk you for everything you got.
Because it's never yours.
Exaction and extortion. I wouldn't do them any good to kill you.
Why would they, if they didn't have an ability to collect on an account name, that they know you're holding something? So it's just like taking candy away from I'll use the word baby because that's more the terminology in law. Baby is like the word for child. So, of course the babies don't know what they're doing in the infantry, and so they just babble on and don't know what they're saying. And these guys are the lawyers control every aspect of anything that's going on in that type of commoner society, so they manage all the common idiots. And they have to swear an oath to cross the bar. A bar is just one single stake. When you cross the bar, you already make that into a positive.
You've just crucified yourself.
And that's exactly what we've done.
Yeah, it's funny because people, he just called us idiots. He says he's a fool. Man, I don't think people understand. These are the terms they call us, and that includes me and you. Anybody that is participating in any way in this system, using that name, using that surety bond, I'm sorry, but we're all idiots. There's no distinction here. You got to understand, I always include myself in anything I ever say. Until I'm out, I can't put anybody else down. I mean, we're all acting the fool. Yeah,
and that's the jester in the court, the pun-ish man, because he doesn't understand law, and if he's not in there, in order to be the only alternative they've got in the system of benefiting from the legal system is to be a lawyer, and then the lawyer, of course, is someone who professes legal. So he's professing the legal, therefore he's in the profession. Someone who's a layman or an idiot in what's considered law is not in the bar, does not know the law, and is always walking in ignorance of the law. But the lawyers, why they're so careful about when they give legal advice within the system, and they divide it up into every type of artifice from family law, criminal law, real estate law, is because they could only know so much and be able to stay within a safe area that they're not going to make a mistake. They wouldn't need insurance to cover them if they were not possibly going to make a mistake at risk. But their whole existence is only within that they've got the go-ahead when they cross the bar. They went from truth to fiction. They went from at one to the positive law. Instead of being atoned, they're now in a system that says you're not atoned. There is no redemption. We'll issue irredeemable debt certificates to all the participants, and they'll guarantor it. And that's why I've never chased any further the idea of, I'm gonna capture the birth certificate. If anything, it needs to be canceled.
Well,
due to what it represents.
There's all these. There's a lot of movements out there. They go by different names. One of them I can think of off the top of my head is GLOOG, which is GLOOG. Get lawyers out of government. Let's go revisit. I think most people remember or have heard Paul Harvey before, but one of my favorite things that he did was this one. He did this radio show called The Rest of the Story by Paul Harvey. So there's a state on the record of our forefathers, a dark hour in the earliest history of the American colonies. It would be the hanging of the witches at Salem. But that was a pinpoint in place in time, a brief lapse into hysteria. For the most part, our 17th century colonists were scrupulously fair, even in fear. There was one group of people they feared with reason, a society, you might say, whose often insidious craft had claimed a multitude of victims ever since the Middle Ages in Europe. One group of people were hated and feared from Massachusetts Bay to Virginia. The magistrate would not burn them at the stake, although surely a great many of the colonists would have remembered or recommended such a solution. Our forefathers were baffled by them. In the first place, where did they come from? All who sailed from England to Plymouth in 1620, not one of them was aboard. Vermin! That's what the colonists called them. Parasites who fed on human misery, spreading sorrow and confusion wherever they went. Destructive, they were called, and yet still they were permitted to coexistence within the colonists. For a while, anyway. Of course, there were colonial laws prohibiting the practice of their infamous craft. Somehow a way was always found around all those laws. In 1641, Massachusetts Bay Colony took a novel approach to the problem. The governors attempted to starve the devils out of existence through economic exclusion. They were denied wages, and thereby it was hoped that they would perish. 4 years later, however, Virginia followed the example of Massachusetts Bay, and for a while, it seemed that the dilemma had been resolved. It had not. Somehow the parasites managed to survive, and the mere nearness of them made the colonists' skin crawl. In 1658 in Virginia, the final solution, banishment, exile. The treacherous ones were cast out of the colony. At last, after decades of enduring the psychological gloom, the sun came out and the birds sang, and all was right with the world, and the elation continued for, well, like it usually does, about a generation. But the new generations forget. I'm not sure why the Virginians eventually allowed the outcasts to return, but they did. In 1680, after 22 years, the despised ones were readmitted to the colony on the condition that they be subject to the strictest of surveillance. Oh, how soon we forget. For indeed, over the next half-century or so, the imposed restrictions were slowly, quietly swept away. And those whose treachery had been feared since the Middle Ages ultimately took their place in society. You see, the vermin that once infested colonial America, the parasites who preyed on the misfortunes of their neighbors until finally they were officially banished from Virginia, those dreaded, despised outcasts, masters of confusion, were lawyers.
And they're everywhere.
It's a
they're
plague.
Everywhere. They're everywhere.
It's a plague.
And they carry the plague, and they carry the virus, and that's why they'll always provide, when you're using the name, because they induce the use of the virus or the diseasement, you carry the disease. Well, you can't use the word cure in our society, because cure doesn't exist when there's diseasement with that last name. And because they talk in a lie, and they carry the lie, and they manage the liars, they basically will never stop while you're engaged in what they control. They're literally control everything by a spell. It is like witchcraft. It's mind control. It's so many things, and they're in there, and they have their diabolical art has managed to make its way through, and they actually control the entire system that the kings and the appointed presidents and anybody that's involved in any power control are basically manipulated by. So they're everywhere. They're everywhere.
It is, and they worked themselves in. That's the sad part about it. They got that bar association, got it into the Justice Department, and yeah, I mean, as soon as the Constitution was written, they worked their way in.
No, I mean,
replacing the
it's so
judicial.
sad. It's someone. I was on the phone with my, a few of my contacts, and one's out of Texas, and he was mentioning. He says, it's so crazy that people don't understand this, and they believe the founding fathers, and I go, well, that kind of upsets me in itself, anyways, just that terminology.
Oh,
but
God. It
just bothers me. Just right off the top, the founding fathers of what? Evil, deceit. Why would you, if they're saying that they're using the Bible as their book, well, then why the heck did they write something else? They added to it. So they said, okay, we're going to write this up. And I'm going, well, in Oxford's dictionary, now all those learned men, whether it was Webster, who did the Webster's Dictionary 1828, he dumbed down 22 volumes into one. He said, these guys don't get anything. Don't worry about it. We'll take these commoner plebeians. They're so stupid. They'll accept whatever I put as a Webster. And the confusion that was caused by that dumbing down of that 22 volumes into one condensed volume, there's no way they could show how the words were being used originally. So the Oxford's Dictionary, when it was dealing with the word Gentile, which meant a heathen, a pagan, someone of an uncovenanted nation, one who knew not the true God, on and on, it said the term American and Italian are Gentile terminologies.
Nice.
Okay, well, I think we just ended that the United States or the United States of America is a Christian country. Because that would be completely opposite to what we just got in definition. Now, if we're not going to agree on the words, certainly if an American or a pagan wants to believe, that he's a Christian or he's of any type of organization or tag name, he can do whatever he wants. He can believe it. Doesn't mean he can act on it. And now that's where the problem is coming in, is that people have been so confused while they're caught in the confusion itself, merging two things that don't belong together, truth and fiction. They basically think they can act on their belief. And they're going, what's happening? I'm being arrested for this. Now it's a hate crime to say something you believe is wrong. And so, I mean, now, I don't know if it's happening in the United States, but in Canada, this transgenderism thing is crazy. Now anybody could be in a washroom. You don't even know what they are, but they have the right to be there because they think they're a male if they're a female, or a female thinking that they're a male.
Well, and,
to me, a professor has been attacked over this because he says you're either a male. If you got male parts, you're a male. If you're a female and you got female parts, if you got a vagina, you're a female. If you got a penis, you're a male. End of story.
That's hate.
If you don't have a good day with that, that's not my problem to figure that out.
Why are you so hateful, Daniel?
Oh, it's terrible. I'm sorry I vented.
What if you got both? My goodness.
I don't know. That's an interesting one. Well, I guess you can go into both washrooms.
It's the only time where when you see the family restroom, with the male and the female, you're like, oh yeah, that's me. To me, that's the perfect understanding. It really helps to understand what is the difference between reality, science, whatever, and fiction, because it's always about the name, right? It's never about what you actually are. It's about the name that you hide behind, the status that is given to you. So you literally can be called anything you want as long as you establish that as a legal status, and then whatever rules you want to apply to that status, which is of course artificial. And it doesn't matter if it represents you or not. If I'm going to call myself a whatever the 50 names are now, it doesn't really matter. It's that this is again the addition compared to the negative. If you really believed that you were something, you wouldn't be publicly declaring it. That's the difference. You would be private about it, right? That's why it's false. You would keep your privacy, but instead you get a legal status which has nothing to do with what your private affairs are, and what's most important about is that it's not equity. Because it's not equity, in other words, you're forcing other people to respect things that they otherwise would never respect. Their religion, nothing about it they would respect, but you're actually forcing it through the law to have a false respect. And you know what? This is why women will never be truly equal. There's no true equality. Equality is a lie. It's not in the Bible, right? But the concept of equity, you actually have to walk in equity in order to have equity done to you. What you do will come back to you. Treat your neighbor as, love your neighbor as thyself. These are all concepts that mean do not force people to respect something that you, first of all, that you're not, a title, a flattering title, but second of all, something that by nature they can't respect. It's not, these are serious issues, and it all boils down to equity. Again, you're forcing a positive law and a punishment if people don't respect what you are projecting yourself to be in artifice. That's wrong in every way possible.
It's tyranny, and the only way it can operate is based on a consensual membership into it. And so, I looked at it when I looked at the final days, or the final moment of in the gospel account of Christ's execution with the two evildoers. One that was, of course, content to be on the wrong side all the way through, was quite content that he was a criminal and was, proud of it. And then the one that actually got the message at the end, and I said, will you remember me when you get into your, kingdom, spiritual kingdom, because he had already declared it was spiritual. He said, he asked me to put back in the membership, will you remember me?
Mm.
And because truth is always there. And it's that scary to a mob of evil agents that operate that. And so at times I probably haven't been strong enough to say, even though I've spoken with many lawyers over the years, many lawyers, from government lawyers to the regular aggregate lawyers that operate the Social Security, social insurance participants, the lawyers are in the wrong. It's as simple as that. They promote something based on a rationalization that we need to lie. Therefore, it's essential to lie because we can't work it any other way. So we rationalize going down something that's immediately going to taint spirituality, truth, justice, all the wonderful things.
I think it's a matter of, you think about the legal profession and the legal system. It's a matter. It's almost the same thing as the concept of taking something literally or metaphorically. And you teach the law by using examples that are fiction. But that doesn't mean you're supposed to respect the fictional characters, right? You're using it as a tool, and it's almost as if they've taken the metaphor and given it this artificial substance, right? Given it form, and said, okay, we're not going to teach you the law by anthropomorphizing it into a man and telling you the story of it. We're going to teach you the law by forcing you to be that anthropomorphization, that legal character, and then we're going to add a bunch of punishments, a bunch of sanctions to that character, right? And that's the story of how we all got sort of trapped in the fiction, is because they literalized the fiction for us so that we can't tell the difference between what is real and what is fiction. I mean, even I've certainly talked to attorneys that are just your basic, I do trust law, or I do this. They don't know what the hell's going on. They understand they're part of something bigger and strange, but they're not necessarily in on the whole thing. They're just, I can make some money doing this. Great. right? They don't really understand the evil they're partaking in.
Yeah, you wonder at times at what level of disclosure does a certain level of a lawyer receive. And I do believe it's probably at certain levels of government. That's certainty.
It's an initiation.
Then, when you really look at it, the best kept secret is don't give out the secret, right? So if you can hold that back, one level, one degree level doesn't talk to the other degree level, so there's no way of the secret getting out because it's kept in that format. The worst thing you could ever do is we used to believe, okay, the worst thing you do is give out the secret. So if you're doing something diabolical and deceptive, you certainly aren't going to tell every lawyer that's a member. There's no way. And that's where the problem comes in, because originally I thought they all knew.
Oh, yeah,
they were all brought into a room and said, okay, here's the secret, guys.
Well, it's no different than any Masonic kind of organization, right? I mean, it's
they're just not going to tell the lower ends.
When you look at the etymology of some of these words, like degree, why do you get a degree in college, for instance? Well, it's actually a reference to temperature, like to what's not temperature, but like the amount of heat or the amount of coldness, right? So actually, what it refers to in the etymology is a degree of crime. Right? The more you study, the more credentials, i.e. diplomas, you get from the state, the better level of organized criminal, that you qualify for, the better license you can get. And, of course, the bar is way up there, right? But I mean, if you're just going to be just the beastly, horrible divorce attorney or whatever, and you're going to focus on one area of law, you're not going to know shit. You're going to know that you have this weird, strange power. You don't quite understand it, but they're not going to induct you into the Hall of Fame, which is like the Attorney General, right? I mean, come on.
Exactly. Yeah, there's, anyways, it's, the warning, I don't know if anybody has ever read that Fred Rodell book, Woe Unto Lawyers, but a good read still.
Yeah.
But the introduction to it is much more powerful than the contents. What he said and who he studied under, and eventually he decided never to practice law. This book written in, I think, 1939 or 1949, somewhere in that level. And he mentioned, he said all the mentors, all the people that had taught him. And then he said when he was going to write the book, Woe Unto Lawyers, the main attorney that he had spoken to just prior to writing the book, when he told him his intention to write it, he said, "Why would you do that? Why give up why shoot yourself in the foot?
Right.
Benefit from what we're doing. Why would you want to do that?" So he never practiced. But he did say that it was, it was the most ridiculous industry of craziness. That the worst he could ever do is argue with a lawyer, because they're just that's what they do. They just argue anything. They maneuver things. They manipulate. They coerce situations. Remember, there was the prosecutors who used to look outside the courtroom when they knew they weren't going to win a case, and they called the original straw man straw shoes, where he had straw in his shoes to make him stand out as someone who could be used and paid to lie, to help the prosecuting attorney win a case based on they had no witness.
Thou shalt not bear false witness.
These guys are liars. I spoke with a constitutional expert, Peter Hogg, who is one of the foremost. I talked to him by email, so I'm going to be extremely accurate on this. I never spoke to him on phone. I did speak to him by email. And I was mentioning regarding that there was a big controversy in Canada regarding the fact that there were certain religious groups that were refusing to take their pictures for driver's licenses, and they were debating on a legal talk show called TV Ontario a number of years back, whether or not these Hutterites were going to basically be honored or allowed to not take their picture for the driver's licenses. So they were driving cars. They're much different than Amish, much different in that sense. The Amish don't have cars. They don't have any electricity. They are completely unplugged in a sense, other than the last name they use. They still pay taxes on their farms, the Amish, but the certain levels of Mennonites and Hutterites, some drive cars. You could pass them on the road and not even know that they are of that religious faith. But the debate was, would the government of Canada support them, or would that province? So eventually, they won, and they didn't care. The province at that time said, in the province they were, I think this was Alberta, they had mentioned the fact was, that they were going to basically allow them to have pictureless driver's licenses because they were so few in number, and they still got one good thing they had. They had them still consenting to break the law by license by using something that doesn't belong to them to pay a fee, which is the trafficking in the last name, which is why they call the Department of Transportation in Canada, it's called the Ministry. It's literally a government department that deals with trafficking in commerce. So we call it the Highway Traffic Act. Okay, so anyways, they had them by signature. They had their consent to the name, but now it's been removed. They don't have it anymore. Now they have to have their pictures taken. So now the Hutterites in Alberta are now paying people to drive them around, which is very similar to a man in the U.S. who had the George Gordon School of Law. He was actually, he went all the way to the Supreme Court in the United States, but lost. Because why? Because he was George using Gordon, and they would not allow him to have exemption to a driver's license because he's trafficking in the name. So they control that. And when I was talking to Peter Hogg, the expert on those cases, eventually he said this to me, Clint. He said, I mentioned I was helping people in Ontario that were having conscious problems on doing something they believed was morally wrong. And they believed that the last name was a fiction. And they certainly didn't want to take their pictures with that. And he said, they better wake up and smell the coffee. He says, if they want to be a Canadian, they're going to have to compromise the 10 Commandments.
Oh, shit.
That's what he put in the email. You know what I sent back to Peter Hogg, Peter Pig, Peter Pork, Peter Unclean Meat, Peter Parasite that's in pork that eats the brain, that they stick in so many foods. I said, Peter Pork, Peter Hogg, shame on you. That was the end of that.
And you know what? What else do you need to say, right?
What else could I say? I didn't even know what to do. I said I wasn't really flabbergasted, and I should never say that I felt it was unbelievable. Of course it's unbelievable, because you can't believe it. Truth is believable. Fiction's unbelievable. Of course it's unbelievable. That's like saying a pine tree is a pine tree.
Here's the thing, Daniel. There are two things that I've realized that when you try to tell people it sounds ridiculous. If you understand what I'm saying, it doesn't sound ridiculous at all. Just a little due diligence. Okay, one of those things is that the word God was never in the old Bibles, right? They actually used a specific word for each different type of what the king changed everything to the word God. So you had Jehovah, right. You had all these words, right? So the God was not used in the Bible. And that's like, for most people, they're like, oh, that's blasphemous. No, actually, each word had its own meaning and its own thing, all right? That's number one. So when you're saying, the word God, unfortunately, applies to all these officials, the President of the United States, the Prime Minister, the judges, right? So you're respecting... Because you're respecting that word in the Bible as God, as the highest being, in every case that you see it, even though it's men acting as gods, as magistrates, you're then tricked into respecting all these other gods without even knowing you're doing it. Secondly, is what was my second? Damn! Did I? I hate it when I'm getting old. I'm losing my train of thought. What was I? Oh man, I should have started with that one. I'll think about it.
It'll come back. You'll get back on the train.
Well, you were just saying, oh damn it.
Well, the last thing I mentioned was that he said that they had to wake up and smell the coffee. These Hutterites or these people that I was helping here in Ontario that were not going to take their pictures because of their belief, their faith. And they said, or their signature, which is a real big problem. And he said they had to wake up and smell the coffee. So they had to compromise their faith and violate the Ten Commandments.
Yeah. So the second thing. So now you have the spiritual realm covered. Now you talk about the legal realm. What is the most ridiculous thing I can tell somebody? Because we're always entrained with the illegal aliens and the this and that about the aliens. When I tell people, hey, your birth certificate has three purposes. One, the creation of a legal identity, put you in the matrix, right? Throw you into the program. Number two, it creates a resident of the state you're born, and number three, it creates a United States citizen. Those are the listed purposes on the websites. If you actually go and look, the government websites. It's not my opinion. That's what they say it does. All right, so those three things. So what do you not want to be? What are these private people not? They're not residents of the states. They're not United States citizens, and they don't have legal identity. That is why, in other words, they're aliens. A private person, as in a private status, is alien, foreign, private, several, whatever words you want to put in there. He's alien to the United States. We all think, oh my God, it's horrible to be an alien. No, actually, I'm here to tell you folks, as crazy as it sounds, being an alien is what you want, because an alien is outside of any jurisdiction. To be able to have the right of alienation is the right to inherit by secession. I mean, I don't think people. This is like I said. This is the advanced version of all the things that I've talked about over the years. You finally realize what is it to be foreign or private means you have no part of that system. You're not one of them. In other words, the United States, as a union, recognizes you as. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if the term natural born is correct, but it recognizes you as someone that hasn't had a burden or a disease, a lesser status put on you because you're an alien to it. I, as a private citizen, so when you look at the law, then you realize, holy shit, when you find the laws about driving and having a right of way and not needing a license in the states, it says non-residents don't need license in the state. Not residents, but non-residents. Of course you don't want to be resident. That means you're part of it. Res means thing, property, right? So how do you those two things right there prima facie, just on the surface, they will sound nuts to people. You actually want to be an alien to the United States. You don't want to be a part of it, and you want to be, and that by worshiping God, you're actually worshiping judges, governors, and everything that the king translated into the word God. Right? You're taking the word of God's magistrates and pretending that it's the word of God. That's what you're doing when you translate the Bible as such. You need to know who said it and when. What was it? Jehovah that was saying it? Anthropomorphized? Was it Jesus Christ saying it? Was it a king? Was it a magistrate? Because they're all God, right? So that tricks you into taking the word of man as the word of God, and yeah, we're really, really in trouble when that kind of ridiculousness has been put upon us, and it's normalized into our conscious being.
Yeah, we're not. The reason why they got the natives so easily was because they signed a treaty to lie, to say something that was an untruth, because of the fact was that they never believed they owned the land, but they had to say they owned it in order to sign the treaty.
Well, they convinced him.
They never convinced him.
They convinced him they were a nation. They actually said we're an Indian nation. What? Why would you do that? Now you're under the law of nations.
Exactly. So, and the fact was that no tribe was ever part of the international law of nations. It itself was an oxymoron in itself. But if they claimed it, it was what it was. But they would never have the same power as those that were in that collective, that UN now that we have. It's really the G20 nations, the Gentile 20. So
would it be fair to say, though, Daniel, that the tribal elders, if you will, those who are on the boards that allow all this intrusion to happen, wouldn't you say they're the equivalent of, or probably are, attorneys?
Yeah, and that's the Judas priest. That's right. The informant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, they're not native; they're alternative now. They carry the alternative name, and that's what it's really about. And so the alternative name, or the alternative name that we carry, does not allow us to be native to the soil. And so everybody is, in a sense, in their world, can be taxed as a custom foreigner. Truth is alien to fiction, and fiction is alien to truth. They've got everything upside down, and it's an unfortunate situation that people that want to speak honestly and with truth are going to be, ostracized, persecuted. Said, why don't you just join in, Clint? It's okay. It's nothing wrong. Just join us. Let's have one purse, as it says in Proverbs. Let us all just join together.
I think about it this way. I mean, here's something really scary. What do they call all of these things that we're doing? They call us the alternative media. Alternative, right? It's not native. So, hey, maybe something's wrong here, huh?
Well, we have actually. There's an actual business that opened up in Canada, and it's actually called the Alternative, and they tattoo people. They have a tattoo parlor.
Think about it this way, right? You're never going to see these people join the alternative, right? Right, these people who you're never going to see a slave master join his slaves in their lame attempts to revolt, through words, through trying to understand. No, they're not going to be a part of the alternative. It's ridiculous when you think of it. It's why I've separated myself from so many of the people in this particular fictional movement that we call it. And I don't know.
Well, if you want to read a really interesting there is a written book. There's a book called Documenting Individual Identity. That's what it's called. And in the book, they quote a lawyer, and I believe he was out of the 1800s, and he was talking about how difficult it was to identify everything. That word ident is not a good word. And what he basically stated was, he said it was, in his opinion, to avoid the problem that he saw to come in the future. He said that his recommendation was to tattoo the entire population, put a tattoo on every individual,
Mm-hmm.
so they know who they are, the way the state would view them.
Well, that's what you do with anything, right? With products, with services. You know, you don't. I mean, you know, I hate to say it, but that makes perfect sense. I mean, why wouldn't you?
That's the best way to run it, and there is the direction it could go to that, because as long as there's a disruption of how to control, how you will flush the bush they do this in every industry, whatever the activity is, and they want to control it. The governmental end being run by, you know, I would just say banking influence, monetary activity behind the scenes. All they have to do is say, you can't access all that candy you had before unless you submit. So you better come in Monday morning with your blood DNA, and eventually, will it be a chip? Could it be something the size, holding 33 million pieces of data on the size of a head of a pin? I'd say yes. The reason I say yes to this, Clint, it's not because I'm a paranoid guy, though I have my moments. But the reason why I'm saying this is because when I ran into a big problem with the Ministry of Natural Resources, which is basically just like your fish and game officials down in the U.S. in every state, they can walk on any land, do whatever they want. Remember, they deal with natural. Not too good with the word resource, but we'll leave that alone. They basically can do whatever they please. And that department, in its capability to walk around, has all its power, based on the idea of tagging something. And when they were coming into an operation that I ran under a charity in the past, where I was deceived and I thought that I could fix the world, and I was going to basically save all the animals of the world on an ark in a concept of education to the public, the taxpayers, which is ridiculous. We're going to save the whole environment based on money, which is dumb. They came into the facility after I hadn't seen them for 5 years after I got the license. And they came in, and they were coming in with these screening devices looking for chips on all the animals. Now it's mandatory, more than not, that all animals held in captivity by artificial legal persons must have a microchip. Well, they wanted me to create a logbook, and they wanted the birth records of the animals. They wanted me to name them and say who the parents were and what the approximate time of birth was. And I had to fill that in a logbook and submit it into the government department.
It's like creating
if I had anything in my logbook, anything at my facility or the arrangement or the place where they would inspect that was not in the logbook, not in the stock, okay, then they would basically put me in the stockade over it.
Well, it's like creating a virtual reality. See, that's the trick with identity. Because identity is defined as sameness. You know, the maxim of law, and this applies pretty much to everything, is that similitude is not sameness. Something that is similar is never the same, right? Yeah, it looks similar, it may act similar, it may do, but nothing that is similar is the same. And that's extremely important to understand when it comes to identity, because identity means sameness. So if I'm giving my identity as Clint Richardson with this address, this federal locator number, and this social security number tied to this, then I am literally saying that I am the same as that fiction that I'm presenting. And that's why it's so important to know that you're when we say you're breaking the law of nature by having a false identity, you're saying that I am the same. You're not saying I'm a similitude, that this is a similitude of me or a simile. It's not. It's a facsimile. It's a copy. No, you're actually saying I am in sameness with this fictional character that I'm presenting to you as an identification. Now, I don't know if I'm saying that clearly enough, but that is why we keep saying that to have the surname and everything attached to it is blasphemy to God. It's defeating the law of nature, because you're saying that you are the same as fiction. You're the same. So when you put an identity on those animals and you say they are the same as that identity, you've just crossed them over out of nature's realm and law into the fiction. I can't tell you how important it is to understand this, because, again, the law recognizes the maxim, it's bound by it, that a similitude is not sameness. So it provides you, again, the legal identity, the birth certificate, and that means that it's saying you are the same. You are agreeing that you are the same as that piece of paper. I can't stress that enough, because that breaks the law. It breaks the foundational principle of law, and that is what allows you to be a resident and a U.S. citizen and to be bound by all this commercial crap. You're literally saying I am the same. That is what identity means. That's why it's so important to them to identify everything in nature with a name. Names are not real. Names are nouns. Person, places, or things. They are property. And see, the big misconception about property, there's legal property and there's actual property. Okay, legal property is a name, it's a title. It means absolutely nothing in reality. It is a similitude that we agree is a sameness. Okay, it's an identity. But in reality, what am I a property of? I'm a property of God. My children are my property. They are a property of me, just like oxygen is a property of water. It's not something that is tradable or it's an unarguable truth. It's an unalienable truth. But remember, they changed that. They said, well, it's actually inalienable, which means though it's unalienable, you have the right to sell. You have the right to say that their identity is a property of the state, not a property of you. So when I say your children are your only real property, I don't mean that they're legal property. I mean they are literally a chip off the old block. They are part of you. And you are saying, no, their identity, they're a similitude, not a same. You're saying they're a sameness as that legal identity that I was tricked into putting them in. They're no longer my property; they're yours.
There have been incidents where they have raided the odd commune, if I want to call it that. It did happen in Canada, and when they raided certain communes because certain people had not registered children into the system with the names, and there's no record, so to speak, leading us in this direction. They basically returned certain children that were non-registered and said, these aren't ours, and brought them back. Because at times, people that are trying to unplug are going to be looked at as very extreme.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that actually people that are trying to unplug are actually following spiritual direction, which is you were not to have a foreign individual of any sort educate the mind of a child. It was your responsibility as the
it still
parent,
is,
so to speak, to look after that child, and that it's never changed. So when you do that, you've actually thrown them into the shit pool, and that's where the problem comes in the colony of this whole situation. And they're going to get fertilized with problems, and eventually they will be in the legal system, viraled by the lawyers, and then they, because of their last name belonging to the Atorn situation, going from truth to fiction, changing lords, Atorn, they're going to go from God, from the true God to a false God, a man-made God, an artificial God. They're going to end up under that jurisdiction, and unknowingly are going to pay for it heavily. So it's a terrible dilemma that we've allowed a system to come into place that operates a society that is to take you completely away from truth, and to do things that would harm the mind of the child. And that's why there's so many confused young people out there right now. They know something's wrong, they can't put their finger on it, and they're doing everything possible to not want to engage in what their parents did. In fact, I don't even know how they could get into the nonsense that at least I had once participated in, because just the cost levels alone of the real estate that's happened just on this side of the border would make it impossible for, if I had gone back to the timing when I got involved in being crazy enough to believe I could own the illusion, there's no way I could enter into that market in the current market right now. It's actually, that tells you in itself it's a time bomb, and that's why they have this cryptocurrency nonsense coming out, because that cryptocurrency is the actual game to actually let you achieve the fact to stay in. They've come up with the cryptocurrency because they're getting you ready for the fact there's nothing backing anything up. It's all a complete make-believe mining system of digital money with nothing to back it up other than the belief that it works.
It's the great equalizer. It takes you completely out of equity and equalizes you. It's so freaking evil. It's amazing. But oh man, and that reminds me, because this is one of my big pet peeves about people, and anybody that's benefiting from it will disagree, of course, because you're benefiting from the evil. You're going to support the evil, right? I was talking about this with another friend about the flat tax and why the flat tax, the idea, will never fly, will never pass. Because if you were paying a flat tax, that would mean you'd have to get rid of all the benefits, all the loopholes, you just have to pay your tax. So every property, for instance, that you own. I have 6 rental houses, and I don't do a damn thing in life but make money from my rental houses. I go to frickin' Cabo twice a year, and I travel, and I don't contribute anything to society, to my own life. I don't support myself. I don't grow food. I don't do anything but live off the usury, the extraction of money of rent, which means to be torn apart from others. Yeah. That's what I do. That is my living. That's how I make an artificial living. That's my persona living in the fiction, right? That is my biggest pet peeve, because if you had a flat tax, why will there never be a flat tax, folks? Stop trying, because all these wealthy people who are making all their money off rent, off tearing you asunder, literally would have to sell their houses. They'd have to say, oh, shit, I guess we'll have to give those houses to homeless people. We can't afford, either that or they'd have to raise the rent so high that nobody would have a house, right? So they'd have to sell. And the market would tank. And nobody would be taking 2 trips to Cabo. They'd have to cut it back to 1. There's not going to be a fucking flat tax. Do you understand? It will not work because the elite, and you know what? Even you have 2, 3, 4 properties. You're going to lose all that. But there's not going to be any incentive, any monetary mammon incentive for you anymore. You're going to have to sell those houses. You're not going to get those tax breaks and everything else, right? So stop trying. Stop even thinking that there will ever be a good tax system. The tax system isn't designed to be good. It's designed to give those people, it's designed literally to give General Electric a zero tax bill on their $9 billion profits. That's what it's designed for. It's not designed for you or to be fair. It's designed to allow people to fuck each other in the ass and be proud of it. So stop trying to fix what can't and will not, and by all intents and purposes, in no way needs fixing, because it's working for those of you and all the elites who are renting each other, tearing each other to fucking shreds. It's not going to be fixed. It's working just fine. And it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's just, can't face it.
Yeah. Like you're when you're the only way you can ever stop evil is to not be in the evil. So here's what's interesting about it was Nero, which was one of the most notorious evil dictators of the time as a Caesar, was blaming the Christians at one point, the followers of that movement, the easement. They basically were being accused of burning the city, but Nero set it on fire himself. Now, if you look at the time of Nero, those early Christians, they weren't involved in, and this is the profile of a Christian at that time, someone who actually stood there and said, I'm under the sovereignty of God, under the anointed of God. They said they were not engaged in commerce. They wouldn't engage in military service. They were considered to be a curse to the romance society of truth and lie that romance meant with the Romans. So they were considered to be a curse. They were screwing up, and then they tried to throw them into the arenas to get rid of them for entertainment, and it wasn't going away. And so what did they do? They claimed later that was going to be their state religion. They go, how, now that's an oxymoron in itself. Hold on. The guys who killed them are now going to claim that they actually accept it, and they're going to make it the state religion. I'm going, hold on, that doesn't make any sense. That's like Poland saying we're now Australian.
Well, it's like saying that a building can be religious. A corporation, a fiction can have religion. Like a fiction can't even feel pain, let alone have a religious belief.
And they wouldn't incorporate. That's another thing too. Is that at the time, the early Christians in the research on that movement would not incorporate into the Caesar society. You were either noted as Caesarian by birth, that's an artificial birth, not a real birth, or you were of God. You're real. And they couldn't handle that. So they said, we got to get rid of these guys. But they said, oh, by the way, we won't persecute you if you just sign this disclaimer that you're not really part of that anymore. And they called that the libelli, which was the original only civil certificate of origin that you can look up in the Roman society. So in other words, the birth certificate, if anything, represents a libelli that says you've denied God. You're now believing in the fiction.
So libel, basically.
It's terrible. It's libelous. And they say a surname is a name over and above the Christian name. That just tells you that you just said it's superior to God, or superior to the true God, Jehovah. This is a very, very mind and eye-opening discussion, because we are seeing the repeat of that historical situation occur again.
Well,
because at the time that Christ showed up on the Roman scene, the Romans didn't care about whatever you wanted to do. They'd let you pedophile a child, anything you wanted. Just watch the movie Gladiator. Some of the history of what was going on in the Roman society was in there under Marcus Aurelius. It was a horrible society. Anything went. Any type of diabolical act you could do. You could molest a child. It was no problem. Whatever you wanted. If you were a gladiator and you won, you could have whatever you wanted.
Well, it depended on your status.
Exactly. And
right.
So the higher up you were, the more evil you had participation in.
Well, and the
what
more
we're finding in society today, and why they're attacking the Roman Catholic Church, which is the controller of all this crap, because they're running the whole scene, and therefore, of course, they're going to be the head of the most diabolical deeds against nature.
Well, as you said, it's like those times, and that means, just as you're talking about, that means those who like us, who truly wish to be completely free of all of that, all of the evil that is the law of man that allows and licenses and permits all of these horrible, quote-unquote sins, crimes against nature, etc. That, in other words, we're going to be persecuted. When you hear about Christians being persecuted, it's not going to be those who attend the Catholic Church. It's not going to be those who go to the Methodist Church. It's going to be people that are truly living the law, which means that you necessarily must circumcise yourself from that society. You must leave her. You must leave Babylon. Of course you're going to be persecuted. Why? Because you don't have a name. But they're going to do everything they can to try to give you identity. That is persecution.
You'll be public tax anonymous, non-adulterous. Adult. The word public means adult. Okay. You can't get taxed until you're an adulterer because you brought a third party into a covenant. Your relationship between yourself and your creator has been violated by entering into the state of evil, and you've incorporated, and that was another reason why the Christians were thrown into the arenas, was because they wouldn't incorporate. The Romans were professional incorporators. They believed in the dead body, the corpus, the unclean thing. You can't be part of the unclean thing. That was even warned in Scripture.
Well,
unclean thing with a dead body. Only those that are in sin are dead. They're dead to God because they don't see. They don't have the truth. They're in the confusion.
I think people don't realize that citizenship, in and of itself, is persecution, right? Yeah. What is persecution, right? The practice, right, of persecuting. So the infliction of pain, punishment, or death. Well, what does U.S. Code say? It says it's your right to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and extorted, right? You are in a dead pledge, right? You're already, it is spiritual death. It doesn't mean physical death, right? So particularly adhering to a religious creed. So if you're adhering to a religious creed or a motive of worship, then you're going to get pain, punishment, and death. That's what citizenship is. Citizenship is persecution to Christians.
It is.
You get it? I mean, it is a penalty.
You know what's interesting? You go in. I've had some moments with walking into some law offices when people were caught in a bad moment while they're in the confusion. And every time I ended up just dealing with simple words. Asked the lawyer, I said, someone was being charged on something. Yeah, we won't put the facts into it, what it was. Anyway, is it fact or fiction? But in the make-believe, they're being charged with something. It was so ridiculous anyways. And they wanted 2 years on this girl. And I asked the lawyer, I said, you're an attorney, right? And he said, yeah. I said, then you have power of attorney. You're her power of attorney. He goes, power of attorney? He says, that's a trust. There's no trust in this office. And I looked over at the girl, Amy, and I said, Amy, he just told you can't trust him. This guy's a spin doctor. I asked him, who's the surety in the matter? He says, well, surety, that has a wide explanation. I said, who's the surety? Is the judge the surety? Is Amy the surety? Without getting into her last name, I said, because she was the surety for that last name to take her down as the debtor, a debtor, what a surname means. He goes, I said, are you the surety? Yeah, I said, who's the surety? He goes, he looks over at her and he says, oh, he's twisting words.
Well, no. Well, wait a minute. That's my job. That's my job. I'm the word twister. You can't do it.
And here's the humor, the punish on this. I said, Amy, I said, he's a legal aid lawyer. He gave you legal aids because they gave you this easement to induce to touch the unclean thing, the dead body corpus, the evil, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You've touched the thing that is evil, the lie. This is a lie. The fiction's a lie. They work on a lie. Positive law is a lie. The whole thing's a lie. The whole thing's fraud.
Again, it's persecution, man. Listen to this. Okay? Punishment, pain, punishment, or death upon others unjustly, particularly for adhering to a religious creed or mode of worship, in other words, God's law, either by way of penalty for compelling them to renounce their principles. Okay? What does citizenship do? It compels you to renounce all aspects of what's called the law of nature, or God's law, the unwritten law, the very foundation of common law. It compels you in persecution, pain, punishment, and literally, or figuratively, I should say, spiritual death, civil life. It compels you to renounce your principles that you, if you are truly a reader of the Bible, would have and know. Right? The very principles that form the foundation of even the principles of law are from the Bible. It literally is persecuted. So what do they say that Christians will be persecuted? Or Christians are persecuted. It's not the holy rollers. It's not the fundamentalists. It's not those who make their little appearance in church. No, it's people who will actually be following God, following Christ as their example to worship nature, worship God. That is who will be. And so what you'll see is every attempt to get you and suck you into the legal system in every way possible. And that is why, again, you're going to have to make this choice soon, because what's happening in the artificial intelligence and the biometrics and everything, it's pretty soon, you're not even going to own your body. You're not going to own your genes. You're not going to own anything anymore if you don't get the fuck out of this place.
They've slowly, insidiously moved in and creeped up on it to make it to what it is. So what's going to happen? I mean, you don't like hit someone with cold water, ice cold water, when you're going to pull this. You basically do it slowly. So you creep up slowly like a snake, which the lawyers are. So they snake and slither up to you until they bite you in the high grass because you didn't see them coming. So when their fangs are in you, it's too late because you didn't see them. They were very sneaky about what they did. They're crafty.
And you know what? Everybody's going to say the same thing. It's going to be something different, but it's I can't leave. I have pension. Well, I can't leave. I can't leave.
You know what someone said to me? Actually, my wife's. This is a friend that we've known for. I should say probably more acquaintance, because I don't know if they're really a friend at this point. But she said, "Oh, I can't do what you do," because she got a student loan, became a nurse, and she said, "Oh, I can't do what you guys are doing right now, unplugged." She goes, "I have too much that I put at stake."
Right. To be vested in something is the ultimate chains of the devil, right? I mean, it's the ultimate chains to hell. You're never going to escape, and it's going to get worse and worse. And the whole time, you're going to be like, well, I can't because I have this. I have medical. I have this. I have that. And I'm like, okay. Let me tell you.
They're going to rope everybody in on that, because that's really what it is. Right. Once they got you on the hook to be a hooker, that you'll sell your body for money, you're on the take. Could you trust anybody on the take? Could you trust a judge? could you trust a lawyer? I know too much now of actual, I would just say enough that I don't want to know anymore, or at least I'm aware of how corrupt it is, that if you want to buy a judge or you want to buy a prosecutor, it's just the amount of money you want to bring into the system with who's going to know what prosecutor is on duty, what cop has to be paid off not to show up with the evidence. There is no way you can run justice when you run money.
You want to know how the justice system works? All you have to do is talk to a prison guard that's worked in prisons more than 10 years. And they'll tell you how it really works. That's the way it works in prison is exactly the way it works out here. It's just out here we don't see it. In there it's obvious. Everybody knows you have to pick your side, pick your gang, and you have to you trade in cigarettes. The drug dealers are there. I mean everything's and the cops are in on it. It's so freaking corrupt in the prison system. You want to know or get a good inkling of how our system works, especially our legal system. Just talk to a prison guard. That's all you got to do. And he'll tell you how it works. You have to know how it works in there, and you have to. I mean, I hate to say it, but you have to let some of it happen because they'll kill you. I mean, it's crazy. So, Daniel, for the rest of the show, man, I'd like to hear. First of all, where can people see the last seminar thing you did, and where's it's going to be? Where's it's going to be?
Christian Remedy in Law at info.com. That's the site that will actually have the notice. If that doesn't work for whatever reason, they can email us at basically at truth versus fiction of law at gmail.com.
Send me those links just in case anybody asks.
Yeah, truth versus fiction of law at info.com will be the Gmail address. They can send to us. We do apologize. Some people did actually take a little bit of a concern that we weren't trying to register people in a sense. We were just saying, put whatever you want in there. We don't care about the email. We just want to be able to send you stuff. And we just thought we want to know how many people were actually listening in. That's all. It's just so that we realized we had hit an audience, and we actually realized we did. And a number of people, but we did have one individual a little upset about it and said, really? You're going to ask me to register a vessel? I never asked anybody to register a vessel. I just said, put whatever you want in there. Because I'm going to tell you straight off, Clint, this is what it is. I have a phone right now. The phone I'm on with you right now, the laws allowed it. There's no concern. I didn't affront anything. I basically have a phone that actually says Daniel, okay, first name Daniel, last name not applicable. There was no stoppage to have that phone under that. But you will notice that if you go to get a passport in the same area that I'm in, if I want to go and get a passport on the side of the border for Canada, it states that if you came from a country, because some countries, it said, do not universally have last names. Now, remember, the Pope said, your given name is Christian, your last name belongs to the church. Church meant pagan temple, Roman circus. So they said if you wanted a passport, it says if you come from a country where the last name is not, you didn't come with a last name, you're only in a country that only had given names, which they seem to still operate. The given name, it says, put your given name, enter it into the surname box, and and then leave the given name box blank. They're so determined to get your given name consent into the surname box, they're even just saying to do that in order to make it work. Because you can't get a passport without it, because there are people from countries where it is not universal. Universal is another word for the word Catholic. Roman Catholic means Roman universal. Romans were liars, professional talebearers. Okay, so they are lying, universal, pagan circus. And that's the Roman Catholic Church. If they wanted to be called Christian, they could have just put Christian there, right? But they didn't call that. Then they have denominations for the secular monetary game they play on it. So, anyway, what a mess. That's all I can tell you. And I'll do my best to, show that there is relief to this. But it won't, exactly what you said, Clint, it will never happen when you're in the problem.
You're not going to be able
to... And it's like standing in pure manure and saying, I don't want to smell like manure. I have people telling me, Dan, it's, I'm in the shit, but I don't want to smell like shit. I go, but you can't be in the shit and not smell like shit.
Oh, man,
the
it's
house
true.
Is burning. And the only relief is to get out of the house. Well, you got to leave the burning house of hell, because that surname means a debtor, a debtor. It is hell, the king's prison for debtors, the dungeon.
What you possess, is in reality possesses you. Yeah, it's
exactly.
And
they gave you demonic, evil, legal rights. It's just one letter off from demonocracy, which is democracy,
or daemon, which is a replacement. Yeah, yeah. I hadn't ever thought about the word universal before, but when you add an AL to something, it has two different purposes. It either negates that thing or it turns it into something more than what it is, like illustrious or noble, right? So if God is defined as the universe, if Jehovah is the universe, all being, well then and the church says it's universal, right? So that does that mean it's more illustrious than the universe? Or does it mean it's not part of the universe at all? Because either way, it's blasphemy to God. It's blasphemy to the universe.
And you notice that one of the biggest film, and the word film is the root word for foreskin, which is what they considered a Gentile, separated from those of a covenanted nation with God was. It became a spiritual circumcision of the heart in the gospel. But not in the good spell, not in the bad spell. But in the bad spell, it was a physical cutting of the flesh. Okay, well, Universal Pictures. Think how many films are done through Universal.
Star Trek.
Oh, it is terrible. Clint, it's so bad. You've got Captain Kirk. Kirk is Church.
Yeah.
Captain Church of the SS Enterprise. Going where no man's ever gone before because no man could ever get there. It's not real. But anyways, people will cling on.
Well, no, my favorite. At least they came out and really, really gave away them. They gave away themselves. When they came out with the Borg, representing the bourgeoisie, the middle class, right? The poor, the middle class. Right. When they came out with the Borg and they represented all of us as that dependent, one hive mind organism, then they really gave away who is behind all of that Star Trek nonsense. That universality, the equality, and all that stuff. I mean, it's a really, really. I think, in my opinion, if you look up the word Borg in the legal language, of course, it just means middle class. All of us, basically. So we must be exterminated because everything we touch turns to shit, right? We multiply like a virus, we take over, right? So, I mean, they really gave away their hand when they created the Borg in that series, in my opinion.
And then you have that word logic, and people take that as like meaning reason. Reason's not logic. Logistics and logic are not really something we should embrace as a good feel word. There's logistics. Logistics can mean just statistics.
Well,
logistically, you may need 700 soldiers to kill 20,000 people. That's logistics. Maybe in the amount of ammunition and firearms available, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing. So we run logistics, but that's why Spock was he wasn't spiritual. He had no feeling. He said everything is logical. Vulcans had this cold blood. They didn't even have proper blood in that series.
Well, it was interesting because he was fighting his spirituality at all times because remember he was part human. Right. So he was always fighting to push down anything of the spiritual law and base it all on logic. Logic, which I'm going to cover in triplicate in my last show here, but logic, as you say, it's not part of reason, though it includes reasoning. It is not reason. They're two different things, right? So yeah, essentially, stop thinking of the word logic as logic or reason, and start thinking of it as the word it represents, which is dialectic. Because you're in a dialectic when you use logic you're right. Stuck in that place, and it's only as good as what you know, and you don't know shit. I don't know shit. Daniel doesn't know shit. Oh. Right. I mean, I know what's in the textbooks I have and what I've found online. That's it. And what I've learned from Daniel, what Daniel's learned from me, and that is so infinitesimal as far as knowledge, right? You cannot have proper logic. It's impossible. But what you can have is reason. And reason is not a dialectic. Reasoning is what we try to do the most on this show.
It's like exact. It's not act. Like exit, leave.
Well, I mean, I would say logic would be the non-spiritual, and reason would be the spiritual. It's like exactly. Two different things. Yeah.
And what we've done is we've mixed. We've done that. I mean, in our society, it's everywhere. As you know, we talked about food. They'll have artificial ingredients in food. How would that ever be embraced? If I see something that says artificial, there's no way your body's going to digest that. It's artificial. It's not. It didn't come from a source that would be, shall we say, readable to the natural ability of our body to deal with it. So the reason for most of the problems that are out there that we've all fallen prey to is that the things that are being done to us that are out there are artificial. So artificial intelligence, artificial foods, it's like an experimentation to see how far you can push an artifice.
Well, I want to make it clear. Well, again, something I'm covering in my last show, but I want to make it very clear. You got to understand something here. Okay, there is no such thing as artificial knowledge. There's only artificial information and artificial. Just said the word intelligence. Excuse me. Right. So intelligence. You think about the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. It's not that they're collecting knowledge; it's that they're creating intelligence. They're creating lies at every turn. They're creating excuses. They're creating stuff that isn't real, right? That's intelligence. You can't have artificial knowledge. You can have artificial information, artificial intelligence. To be inform, right? Informal. It's not knowledge. It's just informal. It's not. It means nothing. It's not. It doesn't require any truth whatsoever. But knowledge is experience. Knowledge is something that you can't mistake it for anything. Right? That's why knowledge is such a rare thing. Knowledge is an experiment.
The side of how they run the legal is based on an experiment, which is trial and error.
Opinion.
So they run on trial and error in the legal because it's all risk, because they don't know what the outcome is going to be based on whoever walks in and what they're going to do in there at that moment, that given moment. and that's why it's gambling, gaming.
Well,
all
think about
the
it.
things are involved.
Think about how ridiculous we actually are when we discuss, like, the Constitution, for instance, right? We say the Constitution is this perfect God-given gift. I'm like, oh my God, that hurts. It's perfect in every way. It's God, it has the word of, and then it has amendments. And you look up, and then they'll quote the amendments. But if you look up the word amendment, and what it actually is, it's an improvement to something that was bad.
Exactly.
So I've got this beautiful God-given document that's perfect in every way, and then I have 20-something amendments, including the frickin' Bill of Rights. I find that that's the idiocracy. That's the
I'm not thinking debt.
Right. It's funny as hell to me.
Oh, we love it when people tell it. They'll tell me, "Oh, so wonderful! They passed another bill to protect people." I said, "You'll be paying for that." A bill's a debt. I said, would you realistically say, send me all the bills, but you want to pass bills through Parliament? I don't get this.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
I mean, your point, if it wasn't understood there, if Congress passes or Parliament passes a bill, it's a debt.
It's a debt.
And you will pay
when you
for
get
it.
short with the will of God, it becomes transitional to bill. That's why we short-formed will to bill, because to be short is to be argumentative and dispute William.
Well,
I am.
Remember, and this is the important part, since we know that there's really no such thing as money, it's just an arbitrary thing that, it represents time. It's not a tangible, actually substantive thing. But when you understand that citizenship is a performance debt, not a monetary debt, then all of a sudden it makes sense. You see, that's essentially slavery. Whatever they create as a bill will be a performance debt, and you will perform whatever it is that they say you will. Why? Because you're acting in the sameness, the identity of their property. Their property is you. You are their property. You're saying that by presenting your ID and saying, I am this. I am Clint Richardson in court. You okay? You are the same as our property. Okay, great, wonderful. You've just lost. There's no point in you arguing anymore.
What your parents filled out was a bid bond. They were bidding on which way you would choose. And then when you signed on to the system to take on that debt that you could never pay because it's not yours to begin with, it becomes a performance bond. But it's irredeemable. You can't redeem it. Their system is based on non-redemption, not redemption.
And, of course, they sell you redemption, and they want you to forget who is the Redeemer, folks.
Yep.
Who is the Redeemer? Why do you think Christ is called the Redeemer? Because the law is your only redemption. The law of nature, going back to reality, is the only freaking redemption. See, this is the beautiful thing about it, Daniel, is that it all folds back, and again, that's what led me to the Bible was the legal law, because I'm like, how come everything I see in here are words like salvation, being saved, right? That's a legal term. What about redemption? All these different terms, but these are going back to the Bible. I don't understand what, and then I find out everything legal is completely and 100% opposed to the Bible. The law of the Bible, right? And suddenly it all makes sense.
Legal opposite to grace. You see, they could never have grace in their system because they're always living in the past. And if you look up past and the word last, they're almost synonymous in their meanings. So you have to live in the past with the last, and therefore you're never in the present. And that's what your first name is. It's how you present yourself. You're pre-sent. You're pre-sent ahead of time to do good. This last name is a con game of that legal profession who turn everything upside down and want to make sure that you have no possible way to walk free. And if you ever watch the beginning of the Ten Commandments movie with the original one with Charlton Heston, I'm not going to quote this exactly, so I'm just going to say it's as close as I can remember it. But a narrator comes out on the stage before he opens up the Ten Commandments movie. And eventually he says, the question is man a free spirit or a free creation or a free spirit under God, or is he the property of the state? That was the meaning behind the Exodus, because God said, Pharaoh, nice try. Those are not your people. They're mine. Nice try. And unlike in the movie where Pharaoh didn't get destroyed in the Red Sea, in the account in the Bible, he got wiped out.
Yeah.
He went right in.
You said something earlier that is resonating with me right now in our sort of mutual, paths that we're on, and that is, I don't want to know anymore. I know there's people out there that are diligently studying legalism and studying all these different quote unquote legal remedies, yes, artificial remedies and everything. I've gotten to the point where I'm with you. I don't want to know anymore. There's a certain aspect of the concept of when you perfect something. Like people say you should never perfect anything, because if you do, you won't want to do it anymore, right? I kind of have that feeling. Like I've gotten far enough now that I don't want it. It's like, how far can you stare into the eyes of pure evil without it affecting you, to the point where you can't function in pure good? And that's where I'm at. I've stepped in, I've tasted, I've felt it. I don't want to know anymore. I don't need, in fact, to know anymore is more accurate. And that's kind of why I want to just step away. I want to organize my thoughts. I feel the same way. I don't want to know anymore. I can't look at this anymore. The dialectic, the rhetoric, I should say, that we are having at this moment is a sign that there's nothing. We're not able to forget this. We're not. It's, in other words, it's so self-evident at this point. The concepts we're talking about, we're not just speculating, as I did way back when. At this point, it's so clear how this works. I don't need to know the minutiae. I don't need to know Section 7.3, letter A. I don't need to know that to know what the hell is happening. Because once spiritual knowledge takes over, all the legal minutiae becomes... It's like wiping off the slime, And that's where I'm at.
Well, here's what a drunken criminal attorney said to a friend of mine when he asked him, what would you do if you were in a real pinch in the court and they're trying to fry you in the system that most people participate in with the first and the last name? And he said, well, we'll just use John Doe as the name. He says, well, I would say, I believe my name is John Doe, but I can't prove it. I place the burden of proof upon the prosecutor to prove it.
Good point.
And he says they'll never bring the proof. He says you'll monkey wrench the entire court. Now, if I didn't feel that what I just said right now was not necessary to viral up the mothership of those listening, I wouldn't have said it. Because I think they kind of need something like that to remove the fear. Because they're not likely going to just be able to walk in there and say, state your name for the record. Well, this is a public courtroom, correct? And they would say, yes. I said, well, I can't give you my private name because that doesn't belong to the state.
Let's find a point.
Only render on the teaser what it teases.
Versus just run.
Shoot. Well, sorry, we cut Daniel off.
We got that far. You know what? They'll have to watch us further on the video.
Thanks so much, Daniel. We'll see you guys.
Between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real. Just a ride. We can change it any turn we want. It's only a choice. Between fear and love. Life goes up and down, round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored.